All right, welcome everyone. Let's get started. So we've got an excellent topic lined up for you today. During the next hour or so, Andy's going to provide you with his thermal imaging tips for success. So you're getting Andy's several years of experience training in thermal imaging, which, if you know Andy, includes thousands and thousands and thousands of burn time on seat cameras, on all the manufacturers' cameras as well. So this is one that I've been really looking forward to, and I know many of you are as well by the number of you guys that have registered for this. So we got a good one for you. If you have questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat, and we'll try and answer as many of those that we can during the presentation. And if there's a number that come up over and over, we'll go ahead and address those at the end as well. So with that, we will turn it over to Andy Starnes.
Thank you, Brent. We'll get started. So if you haven't met me or my family or my guys, then my world's pretty simple. I'm just recently retired from the fire service, 25 years career, 32 years in playing firefighter, and that's my daughter there, Emma. And I have been involved in thermal imaging since 2010, since Project Killer Flashover and my father's work, and been working with some amazing people that have all or thermography certified, which we'll talk about what that is. And we've been blessed to train firefighters in all 50 states and numerous countries. And if you're interested, we developed the first collegiate program that's all online. It's accredited by Western Kentucky University, reviewed by Kentucky Thermal, and sponsored by Seek Thermal. You can scan the QR code and you can go to that and learn more about that program. It's online. It's 2 courses. And you can get a certificate that you can use for CEUs in your department. I am a QR code nut, so there's a lot of them in this program as we go forward. So we're going to talk about tips and things that can help you be successful with the camera. But we're going to go over some general rules and things that you may or may not know. So first of all, if we're all honest, we're deficient in one thing in life, which is reading the instructions. How many times we bought something and we immediately open it, start piddling with it without reading the instructions? Well, thermal imaging is no different. The majority of firefighters have not read the instructions on them. So please read the instruction manual on yours. Most of them come with quick reference guides. They're pretty simple. A big general rule that most people don't know is don't point it at the sun. It doesn't happen intentionally, but firefighters come out from a fire, they lay their equipment down on the ground or drop the gear on the ground, and the camera inadvertently gets pointed up. This can burn up the camera pretty quickly and void your warranty. A lot of cameras are water safe, not completely waterproof. They can be immersed for some time, but not forever. So if you put it past 30 minutes or an hour underwater, you may have some water intrusion. Make sure you use some type of approved carry point. I'm not a big fan of the retractable cords. There's some newer ones come out that might be a little bit better, but I like a seatbelt strap, leather strap, things of that nature we'll talk about. Don't drag it across metal surfaces. Don't use it as a forcible entry tool. Keep the lens clean and the camera clean. Use standard soap and water and clean the lens and charging contact with alcohol wipes. Basically, don't use solvents or wire brushes and things of that nature. And be aware that any technological device can fail you. If you've had a cell phone or any electronic device, you've had it fail. That is, if it's built by human beings, it can happen. And if it's used by human beings, it can happen even more because we don't always treat them nicely, especially in the fire service. And you know, if you've hung around us, there are 2 types of cameras that you'll get to play with in the fire service. Yes, there's drones and lots of other things, but we're going to talk about the ones you can hold in your hand. So you have situational awareness cameras, which as you can see here, the Seek brands are the FirePro 200 or the FirePro 300, and then they have the Attack Pro models. So those are, one is designed for personal safety that every firefighter should carry, and one's designed for the company officer or designated adult who handles the decision making, gives them more decision making power. It is a force multiplier. It's not a first person shooter game. It should not be designed as something that you over rely on or stare at and just constantly keep you focused on that. It's used to diagnose what you're going to do, where you're going to go, and how it can help you see things that you may not see with the naked eye. Here's the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about today, though. In our training and our journeys, we keep seeing certain things repeated, and a lot of it has to do with a lack of training. So we're going to talk about 10 tips that can help you be successful using the camera. First one, believe it or not, dun, 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 you got to carry it. Believe it or not, 50% of the time it's not even carried. We're going to talk about why. We need you to allow the device to warm up. Turn it on the way of the call. A lot of firefighters wait till the last minute, and that can be costly. We're going to talk about why you need to let it turn on early. Big one, you need to get training on your device. Where do you get that training? How do you get that training? Who approves it? All of that. We're going to teach you to learn to scan properly. That's something that recently got updated in some textbooks. That's the proper way versus the way it used to be taught, including my company. We used to teach it incorrectly too, because guess what? That's the way we were taught. We're going to stay low and don't stand up. That sounds kind of pretty common sense, but you watch the University of YouTube and watch some of the Mayday videos I see, every firefighter is walking and standing up. We're going to talk about probably one of the biggest issues that cause firefighters problems is they fail to wipe the lens, not the screen, but the germanium window on the front of it, and then interpreting data properly, not over relying on the device, and knowing its limitations. And none of this matters if you do all that and you don't use the device for size up, fire attack, and search, which is the focus of many of our other webinars, which we won't focus so much on that today as much as the first 9. So let's talk about carrying the camera. If you see in my picture here of instructor Joey Baxa, one of my lead instructors, you scan that QR code, you go straight to this next video, which Joey talks about how you can carry it. And what we've learned is up to 2010 and 38% of all the line of duty deaths surveyed, the tick never came off the charger of the fire truck. That's a problem, a huge problem. Would you go on a fire without your air pack? Would you go on a fire without your gear? No, but this device gets consistently left out, not trained on, neglected for a variety of reasons. And we're going to talk about why that's not a good idea. We thought since, training's been getting better that it's gotten better. Well, in 2020, 50% of the time in a survey with Firehouse Magazine, it showed the tick was still being left on the charger of the truck. Because guess what? Training wasn't focused on. And this device cannot be used if it's an afterthought or your department just says we use it for search and overhaul. If your standard response is, do you use a tick? And they say, yeah, for search and overhaul, I know where the department stands. They don't understand how to use it tactically. You scan that little QR code, you'll go to this video of Brother Joey talking about how you can carry it, which is really important information. So I'm gonna let you listen to him real quick.
Joey Baxa, again here with Insight Fire Training, share another thermal imaging tip with you this week. It's one question we get quite often, and honestly, a lot of people have different preferences, but I'm gonna give you mine this week and how a lot of the other Insight training team carries their thermal imaging camera. So everybody gets tired of this camera being in their way, right? Especially some of the bigger models. If you have one of the cords on your chest that retract and extend, over time those wear out, the way the camera bounces. Plus, I can tell you firsthand from doing all the live fire training drills and BS drills that we've done, those are an entanglement hazard on the rungs of the ladder, especially as you're moving in and out of a window. So I prefer to have my camera. I just have it on a simple webbing strap and I tie it into a loop, and it slings, and I can tuck it away on my hip, or I can bring it out and it will extend all the way with my arm. It looks really long on me right now because I don't have an air pack on. I'll put this on over top my air pack. So it's a little bigger whenever I don't have a coat on even. But the other important thing I want to share with you, a little tip that a lot of people don't do quite right, is we want this to be able to move freely on this strap. Because if the strap gets hung up, I want to still be able to bring my camera up. I don't want to be stuck at my hip. So if this gets stuck, if my webbing gets stuck and I got to pull my camera, that carabiner is going to slide right up and allow me to still have access to the image my camera is going to show me. That's just how I carry my camera. Other people like to put them on different types of straps in the same orientation, maybe like a box light strap or seatbelt straps that can be adjusted or disconnected and handed off to somebody else easily.
So we've got these on our YouTube channel for you to use, and we highly encourage you to do so because we've got over 400 videos there for the fire service to use. So make sure you check those out. Now, here's another issue. We carry it, but we forgot to turn the thing on. I've got story after story of firefighters failing to turn the device on until they're at the front door only to realize there's a problem. The battery's dead, there's an issue with it. Or they weren't aware that every fire service camera on the market, regardless if it turns on in 5 seconds or 30 seconds, takes approximately 30 seconds while it's on to do something called flat field correction. The camera freezes every few seconds as it's calibrated. You may have heard it click before, saw the screen freeze and thought something was wrong with it. It was actually going through a process where it fixes some irregularities in the pixel values. It's actually cleaning up the picture, and it's a startup process. Why is that important? Well, my good friend, who happened to be kind enough to share this with you, he's an instructor, and he said, hey, I mess up, I want people to see this too. And I thought, man, that's pretty awesome. A guy who teaches all the time, who's sharing with people, hey, this is one of my mistakes. He goes to work in fire, gets to the front door, and watch what happens when he picks up his camera. What is he seeing on the screen? Why is that? Because he just turned it on and he needs it to work. Well, that particular camera takes 17.5 seconds to turn on. So one of his takeaways, and mine as well, is turn it on in the fire truck while you're en route or before you get off the truck, because you don't want to pick it up and need it. And that 5, 10, 20 seconds, which may not seem like a lot when you're not under stress, is a big deal when you need it right now. Make sure you understand that, because the camera takes time to warm up. And that's a big issue that a lot of guys and gals don't understand, is turn it on, give it time to set up, and make sure you don't have a problem. If you're in the truck, you can still change the battery if there's an issue. You might have situational awareness cameras or an extra camera. You can grab that. We did a study with Firehouse Magazine. We were one of the few that helped participate and provide data, us and several other instructors. And one of the things they talked about, revealed in that study of many important points, was that a lot of people didn't get training on thermal imaging cameras. And this is the respondents, or the people who participated, said that 31% of them did. A sales representative or distributor did not provide any training whatsoever. Only 30% of them provided 1 to 2 hours of training by a representative or distributor, and only 12.8% received at least 3 hours of training from such a person. 3 hours is a lot compared to what I've seen. Most of them get 1 hour or none. And this one really stuck with me. He said 92% of them said it would be somewhat helpful or very helpful if TIC makers would provide a training system in an electronic format. Oh, isn't that interesting? Well, if you scan that QR code, you can go there and review this study or survey and get a lot more information about where we need to improve. Now, if everybody says we need training, but no one's doing it, what do we need to do about it? Well, instead of you saying, well, obviously Andy's going to plug himself, well, I want you to know there are other people that do thermal imaging training. My friend Mike Daly from Fire Service Performance Concepts, Joe DeVito, the people at Safe IR, or Mike Richardson, all are people who are qualified in this subject. And then you also have our program we mentioned in the beginning through Western Kentucky University and Kentucky Thermal, and our on-site training classes. But I want you to understand there's training out there. It's not elusive, it's not hidden from you. But the reason I mentioned in the beginning that all my guys are level 1 thermographers, because if you look at what everybody else has to do in industry to use a thermal imaging camera, they have to have 32 hours of training before they receive a level 1 certification, and they are certified to go do work and provide reports and analysis with that camera. In the fire service, there's only one thermal imaging standard exists called, as far as training, called NFPA 1408. And if you read that survey, you'll realize that 40% of the American fire service didn't even know that standard exists. That's pretty bad. So how much training is required? Well, if you read in that standard, you'll realize there's a lot more than we're actually doing. So how can we fix that? How can we help you with that? Because training budgets are the smallest budget in every fire department that I've visited. And remember, the survey said they wish that someone would provide this in an electronic format. Well, Insight Training partnered with Seek Thermal, and now you have free, hear me when I say that, free resources that you can go and learn. Obviously, these are about their cameras, but the thermal imaging concepts are the same, except for the fact that they have something called mixed gain mode, which we'll talk about. Talk about their FirePro 300, their Attack Pro. You can learn about situational awareness cameras. You can learn about the Attack Pro Plus. You can see a testimonial of firefighters who have taken training and understand why it's important. All of that's available on their site and mine for free. Guess what? There's more. Last time I checked, the videos we did with them, there's over 30 videos just with Seek Thermal for free. And if you open every camera that they sell, it comes with a QR code and a quick reference guide to give you basic training. No other manufacturer does that. Nobody. And if you want to know what we do in addition to that, you go to that little QR code on our challenge coin that we just had made from the awesome guys at Taylor's Tins. You will learn that we have over 400 videos on our YouTube channel, organized by playlist, by brand, by model, by subject matter. We have 100 blog articles based on thermal imaging questions that you, the firefighter, you, the end user, asked. And we thought, that's a great question. Let's provide a resource article with videos on it. And then even if that's not enough, we have a private Facebook group that you can answer 2 questions to join. We don't put up with any kind of garbage or politics or bad stuff. Free resources, free files, for firefighters to learn from other firefighters about thermal imaging. So if all this is free and this is available, why are we still having these problems? Because A, we don't carry it, and B, we don't even know how to scan properly. So Joey's got another video you can go to. I won't let you watch all the videos because we'd be here quite a long time, but there's some great short, what I call firefighter ADD approved videos. They're 2 to 5 minute longs, 2 to 5 minutes in duration on how to scan, how to do these things. And Joey goes through the fact that when we go to an environment, we need to look at it with our eyes first. We want to use our technique before technology. What's your training tell you? What's your eyes tell you? We don't want to diminish our field of view. And he talks about getting inside the doorway so we can scan wall to wall without being blocked by doors and things of that nature. And we should start by picking up the camera and scan low to high after we wipe the lens. You will hear me say wipe the lens so many times in this webinar, you'll be sick of it. And our scan should begin low and away from the fire. All the old TIC curriculums, including textbooks, said you should start your scan high. You're going to learn why that's a bad idea with today's modern cameras, because it creates some problems as far as what you don't see. We teach you to flip the camera sideways. If it's a pistol grip camera, it's called a gangster grip orientation. You can look all the way back at the end of Google. You'll find Carrollton Fire and Rescue in Texas wrote about this in 1999. And then when you're coming back across from going from cold to hot, we want you to twist that grip like the throttle on a motorcycle, come back across the ceiling, checking for convection currents, thermal layer, where you're at, and how much is passing you. And you get this all for free in this video right here. Just so you can learn the basic behaviors of how to scan properly. I want to tell you that the majority of the problems I have seen have been end user, from what I just shared with you, in coordination with not wiping the lens. And it's a big problem because then they blame the device, but we're not using the device properly, okay? Why should my scan start low? Well, where are victims found, first of all, ladies and gentlemen? Are they found on the ceiling? Well, they might be in a bunk bed, I'll give you that. But in most cases, the majority of victims are found on 2Fs, floors or furniture. They're found 4 foot and down. You read Firefighter Rescue Survey, you will find that in that data. And the other thing is if I keep the camera low in the cooler environment, the camera remains in something called high sensitivity in the majority of cameras out there, which gives it better detail, allowing you to see the layout and life. And then I can look for fire. I know I'm in a fire building. I know there's fire above me, but if I point it up first, what could happen? Let me show you when we teach people to scan. We teach the gangster grip, which is turn it sideways. We can see life, layout, and then fire in one shot. Look at this. This is from my friends at Bearers of the Oath. They're scanning side to side, and you can see the entire floor and ceiling, doorways, layout, furniture, thermal layering, convection currents, direction of travel, overall severity, all visible. Now, obviously, we can't see around the corner or behind objects or through objects in many cases, but this gives us a lot of information in a 6 to 8 second scan. This is what we need to do, is give them more information to make decisions, communicate that information, and do something that's very difficult. Put the camera down. Do not move with the camera in front of your face. One of the biggest problems we see from my friends who are the search gurus and advocates of this world, why they hate thermal imaging cameras, is students stare at the camera when they're either walking or crawling, and it slows them down. Where if we scan the environment and get that mental picture in our head, then we can move fast like we do in standard search evolutions. This gives us more information. Whereas if we scan high first, what are some consequences of that? The majority of cameras on the market use something called high and low sensitivity. It's like first and second gear. Well, before I go from first to second gear, I got to hit a clutch. And that clutch is the little triangle that shows up in the upper left-hand corner telling me this camera is now seeing a lot of heat and it's switching to low sensitivity. When your camera switches is dependent on the manufacturer and the programming and how it's set up. They're not all the same. This Bullard camera, you'll see that we're looking up and the fire is moving left to right. We start our scan high like we were taught, or so we were thought. And then when we look down and get the majority of the heat out of the field of view, we notice the camera, the little triangle goes away, but the image clarity improves. And we can see the stairs, the victim, the hose line. We can see that stove in the corner better. We can see the door handle. We can see those objects that are reflective in nature, because reflective objects show up almost like it's a different temperature according to the camera, but it's because of something called emissivity, the object's reflecting more energy. It contrasts and makes the camera show it differently, which stands out. But this was all in high sensitivity down here. When we pointed up at the fire, the picture on the right shows you low sensitivity, and the technical definition of low sensitivity really is low sensitivity to detail in higher heat. So I'm in higher heat and I can't see as well. Where if I adjust the camera to see lower, stay in a cooler environment, I can see just as fine and actually see better. And what you'll see here in these two pictures is another issue that we'll point out is why we don't use the spot temperature for decision making in a fire. Both of these cameras, if you relied on the spot temperature here, you'd be in trouble because it's saying 104 degrees in one, 105 in the other. Well, if the triangle shows up in a bullard camera, that means 3% of the pixels are at least 230 degrees, at least. So is it 105 degrees in that little spot? Maybe, but that was calibrated in an air-conditioned warehouse, not in a fire. Some other issues we've seen with failure to scan properly were these. People went in and scanned first without looking with their eyes. They scanned high and the victim was to their right corner low and they missed them. They missed the fire and scanned too fast, stretched the line to the wrong area. They relied on the camera and went down the hallway and got disoriented when the camera failed them. They missed critical information such as these holes in floors in this picture in the bottom here. Fire below them, stairs leading downstairs like a split level home. They missed important details like, hey, this is a great room and that's a kitchen table and there's 2 high chairs and a wheelchair there. That's important information. We got 2 different brands of cameras here showing you the same problem. Depending on how they scan, they could miss things really easily. Scan too fast, don't turn their body well, all those can cause issues. This is one of my good friends. He scanned left to right too fast, not knowing that certain cameras, when they see heat and switch between high and low sensitivity, there is a definitive delay. Now when this happens, the camera freezes and this grainy effect occurs, the triangle shows up, but he kept moving. This is an 8-second scan where he missed the fire room. Watch again. Camera freezes, triangle shows up right there. This is a door casing. If you're not trained in object and hazard identification and don't know what those objects look like through your camera, you're not going to figure that out in 3 seconds in a fire when you've never looked at it before. So training on it 1 time a year is not going to help you. This is pretty common for the fire service. They don't understand what they're looking at. And if they haven't trained with their camera, they won't realize this is the fire room right here. And the camera needed 1 more second, given that clear picture, but we didn't give it to them. Okay. That's a big issue. I've seen it in many classes that firefighters scan so fast, it looks like a lightsaber battle on Star Wars. It can't process information that fast, and neither can we. So one of the things you have to be aware of, if your camera has a delay, you better be aware of that delay, because if it delays information to you, critical information could be missed just like you saw. In this particular example, if we scan this whole room and there's a 2 to 3 second delay, we could miss the majority of this room in a small room. We can miss the victim, windows, doors, fire location, any number of things. By scanning too fast and not understanding how long it takes for our camera to work. Now, I'm not a big fan of cameras that delay information to you, and you're seeing why. And this is from the Search Culture Facebook page. It shows 2 firefighters, one standing up, with the cartoon expletives like he's saying bad words, because he can't see. Whereas the other firefighters down low where it is clear. Now, that's not always the case, but his light and his tools, and he's in a proper tripod position, allows him to see better. We always say if you scan high or stand up high, you may die. Because what else is up high? Higher temperatures, less visibility, exhaust, convection currents can easily disorient, fog up the face piece and fog up the lens on the tick. And I thought an interesting similarity between our face piece and the front of the thermal imaging camera is the germanium lens and the face piece almost fail at the same temperature. Germanium lenses are not rated for above 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Many face pieces start to soften around 290 degrees Fahrenheit and can fail upwards of 600 degrees in the HT mast. Now, there's a lot of variables that come in there because people always say, well, what's the exact temperature they fail at? Well, there is no exact, because you could be in a different fire with different conditions and different rates of heat transfer, but between 300 and 600, they will fail. And all the studies showed that there was a mechanical damage associated with the failure where they rubbed their face piece or ran into something. but the average temperature, if you want to know, in the face piece study where failure occurred was 356 degrees. Pretty darn low. So do I need to stand up? No. But if you watch the University of YouTube, you see more of us standing up than getting down. Listen, I've had major knee surgery. I get it, but we need to get down. Okay. Crawling stinks, but we need to get down. And this data that supports why we need to get down, you can find from a wonderful organization called the Firefighter Rescue Survey. It's a voluntary information gathering information from firefighters nationwide. Check it out, read the results of where people are being found, where their locations are, what the percentage of survival rate is, all of that. There's a QR code, takes you straight to it. It's a nonprofit. It's designed to help our firefighters. As Brian Crush, I call him Brian Crush because Firehouse Vigilance did a podcast and they called him Brian Crush, but Brian Brush said, make our metrics match our mission. And I can't agree with that more. Is we need to celebrate our wins is what he talks about. We're good at talking about our losses, but this talks about our wins. How many people are being rescued every day by firefighters like yourselves? So when I said in the beginning, I said wiping the lens is a big issue, probably next to using the spot chamber, one of the biggest issues we run into is firefighters don't wipe the lens. They're wiping their face piece, but they don't think about the front of that camera has a lens on it that accumulates moisture and particulate and debris, which can obscure and stop the camera from being able to see correctly. You see in the picture on the left versus the picture on the right, the firefighter's crawling up the stairs, making entry. Looks pretty good. But 90 seconds later, the image clarity is horrible. That's because the lens is occluded with moisture, particulate, and garbage, and whatever else we run into. So when you enter that smoke-filled environment, odds are you've probably had your face piece fog up pretty quickly because of that temperature differential. If you wear glasses, you understand this better than anybody. That same phenomenon occurs to anyone using a camera. So if that builds up on it, we should wipe the lens. Here's how we recommend doing it. It's a 3-wipe methodology. This has been taught for a long time. Ours is a little different in the order. We wipe the lens of the camera, we wipe the face piece of the firefighter, and then we wipe the screen. And the reason we figured that out is if you wipe your face piece, then wipe the lens and wipe the screen, by the time you do that, you need to wipe your face piece again. So if I pick the camera up, wipe the lens, wipe my face piece, and if necessary, wipe the display, in that time frame, I can see what's going on. So understand, if you don't wipe that lens periodically, the moisture is kryptonite to a thermal imaging camera. It cannot see through water. And if this doesn't stress it to you, this is just what I've reviewed as a trainer or educator in the past year. This is by no means a comprehensive study whatsoever. But these are the reports that have been sent to me that I reviewed them, and all the video had to do with uniform temperature environments where firefighters failed to wipe the lens or they were standing up in the flow path. 4 near-miss incidents, maydays, where firefighters were injured and they failed to wipe the lens and they said the tick whited out. 1 incident where a firefighter were burned because they failed to recognize a full exhaust or unidirectional flow path and were burned. 1 incident where the entire crew was lost, disoriented, and they failed to wipe the lens but kept wiping the display. That would be the screen, the front of it. And then 1 incident where a firefighter was disoriented, he was walking, standing up, resulted in a mayday, and the RIC team member found him and also became lost. 1 out of every 5 RIC teams experiences a mayday. Now I think I understand why. If you want to see what that looks like, I want to watch this little video of an Argus camera from my friends in Louisiana, where they're just sitting around the old campfire in the fire behavior simulator, and watch how the image clarity degrades in a matter of 30 seconds. It's changed dramatically, hasn't it? All it would take is just wiping the lens to clear that up. Well, let's see that happen. So we're going to do a little bit of fun where we're in a Connex box, the old famous metal trash cans that we like to train in, because, you know, we've got the restrictions of 1403 and more people have shipping containers than they do acquired structures or masonry structures these days. You're going to see that through the eyes of a Seek Attack Pro. We're going to spray a little water, watch the effects of thermal rebound, and that little bit of water After he shuts the nozzle down, I want you to watch what happens to the image clarity and then what happens when we wipe the lens. Notice how when we look up, we got a pretty clear image here. You see the cooler areas are pretty clear because of mixed gain mode, because the Attack Pro uses that. No delay when we're going from floor to ceiling. But that little bit of water, watch how the image starts to gray out. As all that starts to drift back and capture on that lens. The image looks worse, worse. It's almost like driving in the fog. All of a sudden, Joey wipes the lens on his camera and then, wow, what came back? Huh. Like you had a filter on the front of the lens and it was stopping it from seeing the environment as clear as it should be. Just that little wipe of the lens, whoop, cleaned it right up. You wouldn't drive in a blinding rainstorm with your windshield wipers off. Make sure you wipe the lens periodically. If you're gonna pick the camera up, save yourself some trouble. Go ahead and wipe the lens like I talked about. Then wipe your face piece, wipe the display, and look. So you won't be finding yourself stopping your skill, your task to wipe the lens again. And if you don't think this matters, this is what a victim looks like on the second floor of a fire when you don't wipe the lens. It's a grown man in the fetal position. This might help you see him a little bit better. This is a high resolution camera. This is a Draeger camera. Back in the day, it's one of the better cameras they had made. So if a victim looks like that, does that surprise you on why we miss things with a thermal imaging camera? We're blaming the camera when we're not even using it correctly. So here's the big part of training. If we're going to train, we need to learn how to interpret the data correctly. That means we need to know our camera, know not to use the spot temperature. We need to understand when it switches between high and low sensitivity, or if it uses mixed gain mode like the C camera does. We need to understand if it has application modes. Maybe it has different color palettes, what those are used for and what they're not used for. We need to understand the resolution of the camera itself, how clear it is and how it affects decision making in cooler temperatures, moderate temperatures, and higher temperatures. We need to understand the rules of victim identification. We're going to share that with you. And what do objects and hazards look like through the eyes of your camera? You need to know all that and more before you go into a real fire. And this can only be accomplished with live fire training. If you notice in both of these pictures, one's a Bullard and one's a Seek, there is no spot temperature in either one of these cameras. NFPA removed the spot temperature from the newer certified cameras for a reason. Bullard uses a triangle to indicate low sensitivity like most cameras do, where mixed gain mode on the Seek doesn't require that. It automatically switches on its own. There is no delay of information. So when you look at this, I want you to make sure if you do anything, you share this with firefighters. We have more people call us, email us, and say, hey, our camera's not working. It's not calibrated right. It's showing 40 degrees when it's 32 degrees. Number one, a fire service tick is not a thermometer. Never has been, never should have been used as one. But for some reason, when they were first put into service, the spot temperature was included because that was on standard industrial cameras, and we just kind of matriculated that into our world. If you read NFPA 1801, the 2021 standard, it shows in Chapter 6, the spot temperature feature has been removed from TI Basic and added to TI Basic Plus. In other words, when you turn it on, it's not there. You have to move to another additional feature to see it. Why? Because despite all the manufacturer's recommendations to not use the temperature measurement to make tactical decisions, it became apparent in 3 NIOSH firefighter fatality investigation reports, there's a lack of understanding on behalf of this feature. We don't understand that this is a qualitative device designed to see heat, not exact measurements. This is our article called The Danger of the Spot Temperature, which will give you all of those resources and more that says why you should use it to see layout, life, and diagnosis of things, but not exact measurements. It's not designed for that. This is a simple demonstration that we often do with the Max Firebox, because the side of it has diamond plating. Well, we use metal trash cans when we're done with our burns because we need somewhere to put the embers. We bought this little $12 metal trash can from a home improvement store. It still had the sticker on the side. Well, when I pressed play, the spot temperature says the side of that metal trash can is 114 degrees. It's clearly hotter than that, because the shiny surface is reflecting energy back. And it's a low emissivity object, which means it reflects a lot of energy. High emissivity object absorbs or transmits energy pretty well. You notice how that changes pretty rapidly with all those leftover pieces of wood burning inside that simple little accidental emissivity drill. And we call it accidental because we didn't mean to do this. We just threw the stuff in there getting rid of the embers and said, oh, check that out. Well, you know, the spot temperature is wrong. How can we show that to firefighters? Well, you can do the same thing in a fire station when you're boiling water in a shiny pot. You can have them stand back and look at the shiny pot while the water is actively boiling and read the spot temperature. It'll be close to the temperature of the room. May not be exact, but it'll be close. And you know that metal is hot. But the camera is set at a preset emissivity that's not adjustable. In other words, it's not an industrial camera. You can't make adjustments for it in a fire, nor do you have the luxury of time to do so. And when I said about the Max Firebox, you look at this particular older camera, you can see the side of the box is diamond plated. The side of the Max Firebox has a cutaway for the Maltese cross and the logo where the heat from the steel is coming through. But yet the spot temperature on this camera says it's 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Every time we do this demonstration, I ask for volunteers to put their hand on this. Only one person volunteers are usually from B shift. I spent 13 years on B shift, so I can say throw B shift under the bus. So this is an example of a low emissivity object. Reflective surfaces can trick or fool a firefighter, whereas flat or rough surfaces can absorb energy and be more accurate, but they're still not a thermometer. Keep that in mind, that more firefighters have trouble with this, hence why they took the number away. And if you want to see why this is a big deal, let's just say that you had a fire next to a stainless steel refrigerator, and thanks to Scott's safety, we don't have to do the math. This little chart does it for us. A polished stainless steel refrigerator is 0.1 emissivity. If your thermal imaging camera says that that stainless steel refrigerator is 400 degrees, the actual measurement, if we did the math, is 996 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just a little bit off. I wish the bank would allow me a $596 variance. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, look at this and realize that this is just one of many reasons that you should not use the camera as a thermometer. It is a diagnostic tool to see the problems. And Seek has done that with their camera, where if you turn it on, that spot temperature is not there unless you push the flashlight button and engage it and put it in plus mode. That's what NFPA asks for. That's what firefighters should have. That way, when we turn it on, there's less to confuse us. Their Attack Pro or Attack Pro Plus follows these guidelines. Pretty simple, straightforward, a firefighter-friendly camera, turn it on, turn it off, flashlight, and spot temperature if you want it. There's a QR code here where you can learn about the camera. It uses something called mixed gain mode, where most cameras do not. They use a standard temperature mode. This camera is 25 hertz and has a thermal sensitivity of 35 millikelvin and has image enhancement software called SV1. It has a built-in flashlight. The first model, the Attack Pro, is not intrinsically safe, whereas your Attack Pro Plus is not exactly intrinsically safe, but is non-incendive or incendiary. I never say that word correctly. But if you want to learn more about it, scan this QR code and you can watch the webinars that we've got put in here for you, thanks to Seek Thermal. And if you want to understand mixed gain mode and why this makes things easier, when I said you got to understand your camera, these are two really good cameras looking at the same fire. One requires 3% or 2% of the pixels to be over 302 degrees Fahrenheit before it switches to low sensitivity and shows color. One does pixel by pixel technology. That's what mixed gain mode is. Each pixel switches independently. If you notice in the bottom corner here, it's showing the colorization of that burn barrel where that little red arrow is pointing, and it keeps the image in focus. No other camera on the market does that. It's an automatic processing feature that they do that makes our life easier. So when we talk about understanding your camera and color palettes and application modes, if your camera has more than one button, you should be aware that it probably has more than one color palette. And some of those color palettes are not designed for firefighting. They're designed for low temperature environments. Seek has one in their FirePro 300 called survey mode. You notice these are two pictures of the same fire environment, but one's in survey mode and one is in TI basic or fire mode. It shows the fire completely differently. One looks more severe than the other. So if you don't understand that, one could make the fire look more severe or less severe. And then there are certain cameras that use something called black hot or reverse polarity, which in my opinion should not be allowed in fire service cameras, because then it takes what you used to think was cold and it makes anything hot black. That's a very popular color palette for search and rescue missions. Grayscale is extremely important in understanding with these cameras, because grayscale is what allows you to see detail and layout, because sometimes we can add too much color and block out things. But NFPA says that no more than 50% of the overall temperature span or dynamic range can be grayscale. So that this says 0 to 1025, we'll just say easy math, 0 to 1000 degrees, 500 of it could be grayscale if they wanted. So they can choose how much grayscale they put in you. But there should be a healthy balance between grayscale and color. The absence of color is not the absence of heat. You need to understand when your camera shows color and why. Because if you don't, this can mess you up. Because each manufacturer gets to choose when they switch between high and low sensitivity, when they show color. And FPA didn't fix that. If you look at the required pixel percentage for low sensitivity, see each pixel switches on its own, so it only takes 1 pixel. FLIR takes 2% of the pixels. Bullard takes 3% of the pixels. Bullard has the lowest temperature requirement at 230 degrees. Leader at 5% of the pixels. MSA requires 32% of the pixels at 290 degrees before it switches and then doesn't show color again to 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a touch late. So some of these are not quite as up to date as others. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, you need to know when your camera shows color. This is an example of a 360 from one of my instructors on a decently involved house fire. So the Attack Pro shows color at 302 degrees, pixel by pixel. And if you watch as he walks around this house, there's a neat little thing he catches that most people would miss. This is one of the reasons why we teach to scan low first. Right there. What is that? That's a basement window. Well, I thought I can't see through glass with thermal imaging camera. You can't see through anything with thermal imaging camera, but that's single pane glass. Single pane glass does not stop infrared energy from going through it. That's why you don't put it in newer homes today. It doesn't have the energy efficiency of your dual pane insulated windows. So in this case, this camera picks up the heat behind that window pretty quickly. And it's not reflected energy if somebody asks. We've seen that too. And if you want to understand what NFPA 1408 says about all this, it says that anyone who uses the camera shall understand the functions, modes, and uses of accessories specific to your brand or model of thermal imager. Well, if you don't know that, we've made it easy for you. Here's how you understand dual gain temperature modes on the first QR code. Here's how you understand mixed gain temperature modes if you're using a Seek product. And here's a video from Scott Safety if you're using a Scott, a Leader, or Argus, all use tri-gain. They split the dynamic range into 3 spans. You can learn about that for free. So there is no reason why we shouldn't learn about this. It's whether or not we're going to take the time to dedicate to it. And probably I have to agree with my search friends, because I grew up on an engine company. I've retired, so now I have to say I've grown up, because my daughter said when you retired, you graduated, so you grow up. I don't know if I've grown up yet or not. But my truck company friends and people who do search, just day and night search gurus, I have to agree 100%. Ticks do not replace search efforts. We have to get in, put our hands and bodies into that environment to search, because the tick provides diagnostic data. But if we don't use the tick right, it can be a detriment. Like if you use the camera to clear a room, you can miss a victim. It's not X-ray vision. It doesn't see through objects. If you look at this video, this person was right-handed. They come in, they look right, they never look left, and they come down this hallway and put their hand on the victim. There's the victim, bottom right-hand corner. Got a lot of furniture. He said, give me a minute. He goes into the doorway, he scans right to straight. He doesn't break that threshold. He starts searching that on the right-hand side. Kind of sweeps around a little bit and then moves down and doesn't check the left side. Puts his hand, he put his hand on the victim. Firefighting gloves have terrible dexterity as far as feeling a person. If you pat with your hands, you're not going to catch. You need to sweep and pull. There's so many techniques that can help you identify a victim when our gear prevents us from, it basically has sensory deprivation. So all of that comes down to, all right, I know I got to carry the camera. I know I shouldn't use the spot temperature. I know I should wipe the lens, but hey, just a gee whiz question. Which one? I mean, they all say they got 320 by 240. Why are they all the same? Well, 320 by 240 is the resolution of the detector. A lot of them say 76,800 pixels. But when you start adding software and all the things they do with them, each camera produces a picture differently, and the manufacturer does their own proprietary program. Here's two cameras that have the exact same pixel count producing different image quality. What I want you to see is that there's something called Johnson's criteria. A guy who was in the military who developed a test on how to provide, hey, I need to be able to use the distance or detection range and then recognize and identify that object. So he worked with volunteer observers to determine a volunteer's ability to identify targets under various conditions. And he developed something called Johnson's criteria. So detect, recognize, and identify an object. The camera can detect something far off, but can my bad eyesight do that? Well, if I have a smaller screen and poor resolution or it's dimly lit, like you see some of the older cameras, that could affect you. You want a bright screen that gives you good detail without a lot of bells and whistles and gives you good image clarity in both grayscale and color without too much of either or. It has to be a healthy balance. As you can see in the Attack Pro, you can see the detail of that firefighter pretty clearly in that bottom image, okay? So that's a good example of how far away I can still see something. And what you need to do in training is set targets up in different containers at different distances to show them that you may not see things if it's far away. And thanks to instructor John Lightly, one of my awesome guys who's a lead instructor, he did this simple little demonstration. It's a container. We're 24 foot away from a pile of something. Can't see what that is. I just know that something's there. At 12 feet away, to me, it looks like a blanket or crumpled up pieces of paper. Then we get closer. At 6 feet, I can tell it looks like a bunch of debris, but at 3 feet, there's 2 baby dolls. Does that matter to you? That if you just scan a room and say, oh, it's good, it's a bathroom. I've heard that before. You know how many people go and hide in bathrooms when they're scared to death of fire conditions? A lot. You miss one, that's too many. So your camera is not the be all end all. It has limitations. You're not going to see everything by the time you have high moisture content, different optical density of smoke. It helps you see, but it doesn't see perfectly. Every fire, it can be different. And you need to know what those objects may look like in a fire that can help you or hinder you. Like if I need to find my way out, what do stairs look like? Here's an example of stairs through a Fire Pro 300. Here's an example of that dreaded ductwork that we all have, that flex ductwork. When it melts away, that wire hangs down. That squiggly looking line that looks like a bad cursive signature, that's that wire that firefighters get tangled up in. I don't know how many times I got tangled up in that. And the far right picture shows thermal conditions down the end of the hallway where the fire is coming out from the left, moving across the ceiling, but it also shows the hose in the floor. The hose is nice and dark. Cold hose line leading me to or away from the fire, depending on which direction I go. This is probably my biggest pet peeve. More people say, I want a camera that can see the victim. Well, I'm going to be the guy that disappoints you, because that may not always be the case. I had to learn this the hard way. As my dad says, wisdom comes through tribulation. We may be told something, but till we experience it, it's just theory, as my friend Steve Robertson says it. So first of all, we're going to talk about 3 rules of victim identification. What is the background temperature? Is it hot or cold? Number 2, body temperature. Is the victim alive or deceased, covered up or burned? If they're alive, their body's trying to regulate temperature. They are an active emitter. If they're dead, they are a passive emitter. They're no longer regulating temperature and they can absorb energy and blend in with the background. If they're burned, they may show up differently as well. What type of camera are you using? Is it a situational awareness camera versus a decision-making camera? Some of the situational awareness cameras, you may not see anything down low in a hot environment. What's the resolution quality? How far away are you? Is the camera in high or low sensitivity? Are you using the right application mode? And did you wipe the lens? Because to get a picture of this clear, you have to use a higher resolution camera and you have to use it appropriately. So let's show you some examples of what happens when we don't wipe the lens and there is a victim. First of all, the image will degrade. It'll produce a totally gray or white screen. And this is a very common problem. I get it all the time. Hey, our camera whited out on us. Bad news. New cameras don't white out due to heat. They white out due to other issues. You'll have a white image due to moisture. You may have a white image due to radio frequency interference, or as you saw with that one camera, when it's switching between high and low sensitivity, you may see a white flash or freeze for a moment as the camera is switching. These next 2 images are victims when the lens was not wiped prior to scanning. Notice how the diminished details of the victim are. First victim. This is in the fire room after the fire's out. Can you see this victim? How about now? Lens is not white, firefighter standing up, image clarity is degraded. This is a Bullard LDX. This camera is a great camera. If you wipe the lens, it would produce a phenomenal image, which I will show you. But It's not the camera's fault in this case. How about this one? I can't even see this person. If you look really hard, you'll also see that this person is crawling towards the firefighter. That's pretty bad. I blotted out the images so you can't do bash camera manufacturers. But I want you to see that this is what happens when moisture builds up in the lens and we don't wipe it, and then we blame the camera. You may not have seen them perfectly, but you would have seen something, and you would have said, I need to go check that out. So what does a victim look like who is alive? The lens has been wiped. The victim is 3 feet from the firefighter, and their body is colder than the rest of the environment, and the fire is below them, so there's heat coming up there. So the environment's hot, the victim's cold, they're right in front of them, they wipe the lens, and there's the victim's leg. Now, if you train your firefighters using fake smoke and heated mannequins, now you know why you have a problem, because that's not how victims will present in a fire. We have so many restrictions upon us in the fire service today. We're making the training environment an environment that will cause firefighters to fail. One of my friends said, this is not a training scar, this is a training wound, because we're actively bleeding from training people to identify white hot heated mannequins instead of real people. We've got to figure out a better solution. But I think showing you what real people look like in good and bad conditions and good and bad behaviors is the first step to showing you, hey, maybe we can do better. Maybe we can take some of these images and say, oh, this is what a person may or may not look like depending on the environment, the background, the body temperature, and the camera. And as always, if we're not good at searching, the camera can become a hindrance. This is a vent enter search from one of my instructors who just sent me this, which I thought was an awesome video of sweep, sound the floor, vent enter search, right? Well, first thing, we should look with our eyes, then we should look with the tick, but how we look with the tick matters. If you do a short range scan where you don't use full range of motion, you won't feel that victim, see that victim until you land on top of that victim. Notice the sweep missed something, didn't it? Did we sweep all the way back to the wall itself? Nope, we scan, and he scans high. He doesn't look down and then goes where? Head first bail in, and little Jimmy takes a size 12 boot to the head. Now that's in training. We can correct that, and we need to correct that there, not let them go forward and have that happen in a fire. This is one of our issues. It's a great evolution to do vent enter search training, but this is why we're missing people. People move towards egress points. They move towards exits. They've been told, if I close the door, the fire department's gonna come get me. The kid's told to go to the window, and we missed. That's our fault, okay? Other issues you may run into, just for gee whiz information for you, is these are not as common, but they may occur to you. So I want you to know up front, the good, bad, ugly of every camera out there. If the manufacturer did not properly install what's called an EMI coating, electromagnetic immunity coating, this is happening in every brand of camera I've seen. This is just one example of where they're doing artificial smoke training with recruits, and they're watching them, but when they key up the radio, it kills the camera, turns it to the snow channel. That's not normal. That shouldn't happen on newer cameras because they put in that coating to prevent it. Watch what happens.
Turn the light over, Zach. Radio. Radio, feet up.
If you were old enough to remember an antenna on a TV, if the antenna wasn't adjusted right, this is the channel you got. This can happen in extreme radio frequency interference where the camera doesn't have the coating installed properly. It can also happen if you go into a building that has like high intensity signals, like you've seen those big antennas, and you make the misfortunate mistake of stepping in front of one of those, which I would not do. Didn't matter what the coating was on it, it could do that. Other issues you could have are reflections. Shiny surfaces can create disoriented environments. And another one, ladies and gentlemen, is if you pay $1,000 to $7,000 for a device, it is not a hammer. It is not a Halligan. You know how many of these devices I see where the front is just mangled, look like it went through a cheese grater because they have bashed it through windows and used it to break things out. We have other tools for that. It's not, if I took your iPhone and busted out a window with it, I'm pretty sure you'd be mad because that's yours. But because the fire department paid for it, I'll do that. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. And this is an example of how reflections can throw you off. This is in Carrollton, Texas, Class B burn building, all shiny metal walls. Looking straight ahead of us is the hallway. but how many doors do you see? A bunch. I see that, I'm gonna put my hand on something like a wall, and then I'm gonna use my hand and my senses to orient myself, because the camera in this case is throwing me off. I even say it. I thought it was somebody there. I was talking to myself and I ran into the wall. If you listen to the video, run into the wall. Thought I was talking to somebody. Ran into myself. Yeah, I make lots of mistakes. Just ask my wife. But that's an example of how, you know, higher resolution cameras can produce a better image in reflections, which can throw you off. So a camera can cause you issues if you're not careful. And all of this information and more came from a few of these. I gave you a bunch of QR codes. If you're interested in the face piece failures and all that, that's on the NIST technical notes here on the left. If you're interested in learning more about PPE and failures, that's in the upper right-hand corner. If you want to learn about your SCBA cylinders when they fail, if you want to learn about UL's work on fire attack and how cameras can help you with that. And then NIST technical note 1724 is another good one. Those are all good baseline information that'll help you understand the basis why thermal imaging is needed. It's not a thermometer, but it helps give you an idea of how bad of an environment you're crawling into. This is all available for you to use, for you to share. And this is the basis, this is the standard for thermal imaging cameras, NFPA 1801, the 2021 standard. They are consolidating this standard into another one soon, but it's one of the most in-depth documents. If you go on nfpa.org, you can read it for free. You don't have to buy it. You do NFPA link, you can pay $99 a year and read everything electronically. It gives you the minimal performance standards. We also have a Why is NFPA 1801 important to firefighters webinar on our YouTube channel you can watch for free. And if you want to learn more about the Seek Attack Pro and their decision-making cameras, we have 2 free webinars. One is the Attack Pro and the other is the Attack Pro Plus, which basically is the NFPA webinar, which allows you to look at all the information, the specs on those cameras for free, how to use them, how to share that information with your firefighters. Easy as we can make it. And then if that's not enough, we have a program through Seek Thermal that allows you to get a camera from them. You can put in your credit card, they'll help you get a camera, and then you can use our free lesson plan and test that camera against your top 2 cameras. Because if you're going to buy cameras today, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what you buy, make sure you test your top 3 picks in a live fire environment. Do not turn it on in an ambient temperature environment and say, yeah, that looks good. Because you are going to be injured, disappointed, or worse when you use it in the fire. That is a reason why if you read NFPA 1408, it talks about all participants, affected members, shall receive training before the device is placed into service. Before. So that means we have tested this. We know what it'll do, what it won't do. And everything I shared with you today, this entire presentation, videos, resources, Attack Pro, Fire Pro 300, training videos, if you scan that QR code, my phone will start going nuts and it'll say, so-and-so would like access to the Google Drive. I'll hit approve and you get access to a free Google Drive, all free. I've given you dozens of hours of video, hundreds of pages of literature, but it doesn't do any good unless you watch it or read it. It's up to you. Everybody loves to force doors, throw ladders, and pull hose, but nobody wants to read 700-page research documents. We're trying to make it as easy and simple as possible, but we need your help in sharing that information and making it easier for other firefighters to know, because once you understand it, you should turn around and share and help someone else. That's our goal. Here's my contact information and all of our social media stuff. Please like and share our post if possible. We post on every platform every day, sometimes twice a day. From my instructors, Joey Baxa, Tim Mills, Thomas Anderson, and then my other instructors are starting to get more into social media. I have two Twitter pages, which is now X. Sorry, I'm not used to that. We have 2 Instagram pages, myself and actually 3, myself, Tim Mills, and Joey Baxa. And then we have our YouTube channel, which is our most popular one. And we're on TikTok, even though I don't go on there very often. I'm not a big fan of it. And then we have 2 LinkedIn pages and our website and our Facebook page and Seek Thermal's website. We are giving you everything we got to help you, but you gotta go look at it. You gotta read it and check it out. Thanks for your time today. I've got like 30 seconds left, so I don't like to waste people's time. I know you took an hour to listen to me, which humbles me every time I get an opportunity to do it. Contact me if you have any questions, shoot me an email. Be glad to help, and I appreciate your time. Please share this, and hopefully we can get a recorded version uploaded onto our YouTube channel and channels in the next few days. Thank you. God bless you all. Have a good day.